All right, let's try this again. I'll try to give pithier answers than I did before.
Okay, well, good morning, Mr.favell.
Good morning, John D. How you doing?
So, do you have any idea of what police brutality is or what's going on?
Sure. Yep. I mean, I follow what's going on in the news, and I try to stay, informed by pretty much everything that's going on. So I feel like I have a pretty decent and comprehensive understanding of the state of things.
So, do you believe that what they're doing is wrong, or is it by accident, or do you believe that they're believing that they're the law, they're enforcing it, or anything like that?
Well, again, and I'll try to say this as quickly as possible because I know you're running out of storage space. It's a very complex answer. I think it would be an incorrect characterization to say that that people who go into law enforcement are specifically going in with the intention of creating murder and mayhem. There may be a small minority that is in fact that there is evil people, but I think that when we're looking at this issue, you got to look on the systemic level and what conditions allow that sort of behavior to foment, and what sort of environments allow these sorts of things to happen, and what has happened historically, and what has happened in terms of specific locales and the way that municipal and other entities have dealt with these issues, and there's a lot of other issues bound up in it. That all being said, obviously there's a problem. There's a big problem, and the problem disproportionately affects people of color and other of disenfranchised communities in the United States. So there needs to be addressed on that level with specific emphasis on those communities. I think that we have to always be careful, because within any big bureaucracy, there is always the tendency to when there's problems, I think we want to simplify. We want to make it that all cops this, all cops that, all cops this or that. I think most individual cops that go into that profession do so because they sincerely want to help people. They sincerely do believe in law and order and justice and things that we need in order for society to thrive. However, I do think that there are certain systemic, meaning things built into the system, that are now we're seeing manifest in really ugly, awful ways, and a lot of that has to do with how, with history. A lot of that has to do with the current state of, I think, the philosophy of policing that has been touted for quite some time. So it's a multifaceted problem that requires multifaceted creative solutions. On the whole, there's a problem. There's a big problem that needs to be addressed, and it does need to be addressed specifically with very clear understanding that it is disproportionately affecting certain groups of people, and therefore there needs to be reform directly aimed at that community.
Do you think that the church should do anything? Should they stay neutral? Should they make a difference?
The Catholic Church?
Just a church in general, just like
any church.
Any church.
This runs into the same problem, just in terms of churches are not monolithic entities, just like no police force is monolithic, no bureaucracy is monolithic. Do I think in general society on the whole, churchgoers, non-churchgoers alike, should be very, very conscientious in working towards social justice in the ways that with the apparatuses that they have? If the church exercises certain moral influence, then I do think it is a responsibility to come to bear on the situation if that's a power that they yield. So I guess the church in general, whatever that means, the religious community at large, I don't know. It's hard for me to speak on behalf of a monolithic entity, and it's hard enough for a monolithic entity to speak on behalf of itself. I'd say each person, with whatever they're involved in, whatever systems they're involved in, as an individual and as part of a broader society, should be conscientious and should be asking tough questions, should be working whatever way that they have at their disposal to further the cause of social justice in whatever mechanisms that requires.
So who should be the people who should step up? Who should have a voice? So basically, who should say, hey, this is a serious issue and we need to try to fix this or come with a...
Well, like most problems that are systemic and societal, it should be that people who have a vested interest in creating civil society, which I would argue is everybody, should have a voice in this issue. However, I do think that there have been groups that have been marginalized on issues and whose voices should be heard in a more prominent and more predominant way that has traditionally been the case. Again, complicated issues require complicated solutions. Complicated solutions require a lot of people to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations. A lot of action needs to be taken. But I would argue that everybody has a vested interest in seeing civil society thrive. Everybody has an interest in seeing the country, community, city that they live in be a safe, welcoming, and justice-oriented place for everybody, for every citizen, regardless of all the different factors, whether it's ethnic, racial, sexual orientation, religious preference, whatever it happens to be. Everybody has the right to a safe community where the mechanisms of law enforcement can be trusted to look out for their interests and for the interests of people that look like them.
Well, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Favell, again. Right. And great interview.
Cool. Thanks, man.